Good afternoon, all. We are going to have a topic. It's not going to be a very serious topic. We'll talk about governance, risk, and compliance. So it's not about seriousness, it's just about being focused. So we'll see how this session explores businesses enhancing and integrating proactive risk management, ensuring regulatory compliances, and fostering a culture of strong corporate governance. Our key discussion points would be leveraging technology of compliance automation, mitigating emerging risks, and aligning GRC, which is group risk and compliance, governance, compliance, risk and compliance strategies with business objectives to drive sustainable growth. I have very qualified and knowledgeable friends, Mr. Javed and Mr. Amro. To start with, I'll have a quick round of questions, couple of questions, starting with Mr. Javed. So, what are the key challenges faced by the CFOs and how the governance, risk, and compliance is helping them in today's world?
No, thank you, Syed, for the question actually and the introduction. So just to add into that, my name is Javed Akbar. I'm the Chief Risk Officer and Chief GRC and Data Officer for one of the listed companies in the kingdom. So from the questions perspective, the way I look at, I meet a lot of CFOs and interact with them in either in the business here or around the world in my travels. So I see that CFOs are it's like a changing world, a dynamic world. They have a lot of challenges. And everybody has to prioritize as per their own comfort zone and as per their own criteria, as per their priorities that they have. So the first challenge, I think, is that prioritization, because you are faced with a lot of challenges. How do you prioritize your challenges? Mm-hmm. So you cannot maybe meet everything, all the expectations from you, either from as being top in the management, as well as from the board, from the stakeholders, from outside stakeholders, let's say from the banks that you are dealing with, from the board that you are dealing with, from your management that you are part of, and a lot of the organizational responsibility that you have as a CFO, as one of the leading or the core person in the organization. I think so. The first challenge that I see when I interact with people at this level is how they are prioritizing to meet the changing expectations and the transformation that going around. So now, coming a bit into the GRC part of it, I see the connection that I would like to make is with the governance, that how CFOs are managing their governance role. They are experts in finance, and a bit of it is a positive, but at the other side, they need to, my advice when I talk to them is to up their game on the governance side. How do you understand the dynamics of the board? How do you understand the audit committee's expectations from you? Not only just from the financial side, but broadly in the organization as a strategic driver of the organization, as kind of a co-pilot or the leader in the organization, that what boards expect from you. How do you understand that structure? So I think the governance part at that level, and then how do you drive that governance throughout the organization? As a leader in the organization, how do you set that culture right that needs to be in the overall organization? That you get a top-down approach, you get your strategy right and alignment right with external stakeholders. You're top tier in terms of the board and board governance, and then driving it, developing that culture throughout the organization and driving it for the organization. That is another challenge from the governance side. Now, coming to the risk, as we are talking about the GRC, I think if you ask me, the biggest challenge that I see is balancing the strategic growth and the risk at the same time. So the intersection that CFO is sitting today is basically they have to manage their strategy, they have to achieve the business targets, and at the same time they have to manage the risk and be in a position that, so they are wearing basically multiple hats. So their strategy they need to achieve. So creating that balance that you need to take appropriate risk while achieving your strategy is another challenge that they need to master on. So that mastery comes with time. It is not that that does not come. So a bit of the challenge here is our finance background. Typically, the CFOs that come from the finance and accounting background, and then they transform into a broader role that has many responsibilities. So with that mindset, they sometimes are good at managing risk. But my advice when I meet with them is don't always look at from the conservative approach of risk management. I was lately surprised. I was reviewing a board pack, and it was presented in terms of the risk appetite was presented for the organization. When I looked into it, there was 10 categories. And there was no category where even the risk appetite is medium. So risk appetite was set either 0 or low, very low, or that was the risk appetite. I was surprised, and during the discussion I mentioned that you cannot operate with this risk appetite. You need to be thinking that you need to balance that. You need to achieve your strategy. How will you achieve your strategy when you say that your financial risk is very low? Financial risk appetite is very low. Okay, maybe the safety risk appetite is low. Okay, understandable. Maybe we go with the risk averse approach. So I think that is where I want to bring this, that in terms of the risk, the biggest risk, our biggest challenge, I would say the CFOs need to work on, or we are a finance community need to work on, is balancing that risk, strategic risk with the risk management part of it. Do not think too conservative while you're managing risks, and at the same time, you do not let it loose that you will not be able to achieve your strategies, or you are too tight on the other end when you are. So creating that balance is extremely important. And then final part in the C, which is compliance. I think the challenge is compliance is honestly one of the top challenges in this region, operating in this region these days. So especially the regulatory compliance. The regulations are like mushrooming. They are popping out from every day. You will see there is a new regulation, whether it be from zakat and tax purposes, whether it be from AI regulation. So how many of you know that? How many of us know that there's actually AI regulation in the kingdom? So the Sadaya is the body that we know for the data protection, but if you look into this, they have like detailed AI regulation actually, that how if the companies, if you are having any AI operations in your business, you need to register with a new body in the kingdom, and you need to comply with their regulations. So that compliance comes in, right, left, center. You look at it, there's a new regulation that you need to comply with. So I think that is another challenge that they need to bring in. They need to sit closer with their chief GRC or the chief compliance officer and have close coordinations with them, that how to meet that compliance challenge as well. So to conclude this question broadly, so the challenges are on every part, whether it be governance, whether it be risk or compliance. So bringing that balance and creating an environment where you work in a culture which is based on risks and looks into the compliance and compliance and risk as a strategic enabler, then I think you'll be able to manage that broadly.
Perfect. Great. Thanks, Javed. Thanks for sharing the knowledge on this. Javed mentioned two very important words which I would re-emphasize. One is prioritizing. Everything should be prioritized in the business, which helps a lot. And second one is strategizing. So as CFOs, we need to prioritize things and we need to strategize. One other very important thing he mentioned was the ever-changing compliances in KSA, especially KSA market. We keep seeing a lot of changes in compliances, and we need to comply with them. So that's where GRC comes in place. Thank you so much, Mr. Javed. In connection to this, I'll just move to Mr. Amro with a new question, like what do you think new coming in with governance, risk and compliance in ongoing and evolving in the businesses?
First of all, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Welcome everyone. I'm still shocked a little bit because I'm still thinking about the stuff Javed said. And Javed said too many things that I'm trying to stratify right now in my head and cut it into pieces, because he almost touched bases on almost every single aspect of the industry. And back to your question, Syed, what's new? When I walked in today, I had the privilege to shake hands with a lot of people who I met before, and they attended a couple of my presentation before and my other panel discussion, and they know I'm extremely honest and transparent to a fault and a guilt. And I see a camera at the back, so I have to be careful with what I say right now, because I'll be talking about certain companies. Some of these companies have members today in this room. So I'll be doing a lot of wink wink, so you guys can guess the company in your own without me mentioning details other than that. But before I go into what's new, let's at least spend 1 minute discussing what's happening. And I would like to shed some light on what's happening, because let's not get around the fact that GRC is a new concept in Saudi Arabia. And I wanna narrow the discussion to the environment we are in, Saudi Arabia in general. We're not talking about maturity internationally or globally. I'm not going into that. I'm gonna talk about the environment we have. And the environment we have is, we know for a fact, and if you click right now in Snapchat, on ChatGPT or Google, you'll know that our environment right now is 60% is family-owned businesses. So the challenges you were talking about, try to walk in a boardroom with a family-owned business, it's a multi-billions industry with an international and global presence. Try to convince them to invest money on the GRC. Try that. That is the biggest challenge I faced in my life, my career by hand. And somehow, my career kept pushing me toward working with family-owned businesses. For some reason, I don't understand. It's that magnetic power that I have. And go to LinkedIn, research me, you will see a lot of names there that is actually family-owned business that I worked before and I'm still working with. But it's a challenge. It's a challenge because before we go on and discuss risk, compliance, risk assessment, you should understand your environment. If you don't understand your environment, you're not going to be able to do anything in that space, either in governance, because you will try to convince shareholders to delegate some of their authority down to the management team. Good luck with that. You're going to discuss with the shareholders that some of the risk require them to invest somewhere where they don't feel that that investment is valuable. You're going to sit with shareholders trying to convince them from a compliance perspective that these are regulatory compliance that you have to adapt, and it will cost you money, and it will actually put a burden on you in making some of the decision. Good luck with that as well. So these are actually an actual real-life example challenges we're facing today in this market. A lot of look at this market, a lot of look at our environment is a very mature one. I would say it is maturing, but it's not mature yet. We have a lot of challenges. You can look at the biggest company out there, Aramco of the world, the Sabic of the world, and what have you, but I have challenges in those companies as well. I remember the first time I discussed risk in Aramco. One of the senior people sitting in that room asked me, what is the biggest 5 risk facing Aramco? So imagine reducing Saudi Aramco with its global presence to 5 risks only. So this is actually the maturity in the room that was in. Yeah, I think a couple of days ago, I had a different audit and risk committee meeting, and we were discussing risk. That list went to 12 and 15. So what is new? You ask me what's new. Again, what is new is actually culture awareness. It baffled me, and it really puzzled me that the biggest challenge to face when it comes to risk management is the cheapest one to implement, which is changing the culture of the company to become a risk aware. That doesn't cost you money, because I know a lot of you in the room will talk about risk assessment, doing workshop, bringing consultant. Believe me, I spent, 25 almost years in this career. I'll tell you, that's the easiest part. That's literally the easiest part. I can sit in my office, procure a couple of consultants, they come, spread them around the company doing workshop, accumulating risk, and the bonanza of the heat map will start on, and all that discussion and presentation. But that's not the hardest part. The biggest challenge is the culture. If you don't have, and you can quote me on this, if you don't have a company that is risk aware, it doesn't matter what you do, you will not be successful in your endeavor when it comes to governance, risk, and compliance. So that's the biggest challenge. How you enforce a culture of risk awareness, how you foster it first, how you enable it first, how you make sure that the boardroom discusses risk properly, how you make sure that the audit committee or the risk committee discuss the appropriate risk. How you do that, then how you make sure that the company itself down road is actually proactive when it comes to identifying risk, not reactive. I can run a poll right now in this room, and I'll tell you how many times you've been sitting in the room and people were coming into your office telling you, hey, look, this is my risk assessment, take it and discuss it with the board. I'll take it as like less than 1%. It's always you coming and going, guys, we need to do risk assessment, send me your risk, send me that. If you're still doing that, that means maturity is not there yet.
No.
That means the trigger is not there. That's mean if you're not discussing risk at the board, if your risk management does not enable decision at the boardroom, that means you're not there yet. So you have, that's for me is the challenge. That's for me is the biggest challenge. And for me moving forward, effort should be focused. And I shook hands with some of our consultants here without mentioning names. And again, they come up with the same pitch. I love them all, by the way. Hi to everyone. I respect you. We're friends. We just had lunch yesterday. But their pitch is still the same. Do you do your risk assessment? Should we come and help you with risk assessment? Should we come and do refresh for risk assessment? I don't need help with that. Can you come and help me improve my risk culture in the company? That's a product, by the way. It's not in the market. So far, it's not in the market. I haven't seen it. So if you are an entrepreneur somewhere sitting here, start thinking about that, because culture is not addressed. And if you improve culture from the board level to the committee level, down the board to the management level, everything will follow through. Risk management will follow through, governance will follow through, and compliance will follow through. So I know a lot of people expected something on the line. What's new in the risk management? AI, machine learning. You know, the buzzword, let's do it. ESG. I mean, we had just a couple of minutes ago, and I had a lot of questions for him. I will corner him after the meeting. But I'm not going to talk about that, because that is so advanced right now for whatever we're talking about. Because again, you can bring the tool, it will accumulate information, it will give you the beautiful heat maps. But if the culture is not there, if there is no people discussing it, if it's not driving decision making, it's useless.
Yeah.
So what we did in Bupa, Arabia, for example, and I'm not going to share all my secrets because I'm planning to charge people for it later, is I started from the top. I literally, and I think the camera is still on, so I would rephrase that a little bit. So I did not start with management. I started from the board level and the committee level. And I told them, look, if I cannot bring you information that enable your decision making, then I'm not doing my job. As simple as that. So I will have to come to you with risk information that enable decision making. If I cannot do that, then it's, the work is not. And things start following up, following down. I can talk a little bit in details what exactly the action we took. It's a long journey. It's a beautiful journey I'm very proud of. And I think we will touch on it in the other questions. So I'm not gonna spoil the ending for you, because I have a LinkedIn account that I'm planning that you guys all send me stuff into it, and I'm planning to spread my image a little bit and brand through it. So I'm happy to receive all your questions. I'm happy to sit with anyone and tell you our story, and we will touch base on some of it. But I think if there is one piece of information I want to leave you with from this discussion is culture trumps everything else. And that's not only on strategy, it's not only in finance, but even in risk and GRC. So if you don't have that culture, don't waste time investing in GRC. If you ask me how can you do it, I can answer that, but I think I will return it back to Syed. If this is part of the question, I'm happy to give you a little bit of details. How did we improve the culture? Where did we start it? What are the challenges we faced? And then how things follow. What is the value what is exactly the value added driven that we had from it? Believe me, I had a lot of failures too. And those were lessons for me as well. But I think we need to go with the flow with the discussion. And if we have time, I will address those, Syed. But if we don't, please stop me anytime outside after, and I will be happy to discuss this with you as well.
Thank you, Amro. Thank you so much, and all the best for you, because you have opened up so many things that you will have a lot of questions at the end. All the best for you on that. I'll talk about a few other things, and I have a couple of questions for Mr. Javed and Mr. Amro. A few things like financial risk mitigation. We all, as finance controllers, chief financial officers, finance managers, we always keep doing something or the other to mitigate risk. There are various types of risk. I just wanted to touch base few of them, like insuring yourself on the company side, evaluating efficiency of the company, investing in QA/QC. Many of us, QA/QC, we keep it as the last thing. QA/QC, quality assurance, quality control, every company, it's very, very vital for GRC. Diversifying the business investments, keeping your AR low. This is the biggest challenge we all CFOs have, right? Keeping our AR low. Reducing unneeded debts. We can talk so many risks we have which we are trying to mitigate. With this, I'll just move to one other question to Mr. Javed. What are the objectives of GRC to drive the sustainable growth? To drive the sustainable growth, the objectives of GRC. What do you think?
Well, that's a very interesting question. So, see, we talk a lot about sustainability and sustainable growth, and then we try to connect that with GRC. I think the primary derivative that Amro was trying to create, shed some light upon. I will take it from there. Your strategy will never be successful. You will, let alone be sustainable, without having that proper culture that you are having. So I think the objective of GRC to create that sustainable value is first the alignment with your strategy, where you see yourself, your company should be seeing the same direction. If you cannot think about in terms of the strategy next 5 years, next 10 years down the road, your framework is different, your focus is different than where your company's focus is, where your strategy is. So I'll share an example. Like if you are in a business which is thinking of diversifying the product portfolio. So you as a GRC person need to look into the same direction, see that what are the risks come with that. Will you be focusing on the project risks that you may never have focused, for example, by now? So or you are like diversifying in a way that you are closing certain businesses and focusing on the other businesses. So what are the key risks that you need to look into that perspective? So that alignment is crucial. So that is the first objective, to set yourself that alignment with the strategy and with the direction whether your organization is moving towards. And the second thing is set your governance right. This is extremely important. If you don't set that governance right, you will never be able to achieve as a GRC leader the actual value that you can deliver to the organization. For example, as the point my friend just kind of highlighted earlier, let's say in family businesses, that is where the big gap is in terms of the governance. So how do you set that right? Do you have a right structure to support your GRC in terms of the long-term view? Do you have support from the board? Do you have independence that you need? Do you have the right resources and the budgets to support that? Once you get that governance right, are you able to really elevate the risks that should go to the board on a timely basis? And once you have that strategic fit with the board, that's what we refer to as governance at the top of the house, then you send that same governance across the organization. Do you have the governance that you are actually in the picture of the top risks or the top compliance concerns or the top that happen in the organization? That you have, like one of the plants in Nigeria, for example. Do you have the picture to see that if not in the real-time basis, as soon as possible? Do you have another plant, let's say in Hail in Saudi Arabia? You're sitting in Riyadh. Do you have the structures and the systems and that alignment to see that risk in a virtually real-time basis and then send that escalation to the management or to the board? So setting that governance is again very, very crucial step. So if you want your GRC to be successful, set that governance right. And the other thing I usually advise my friends is to have an integrated GRC function. That's where I think you will agree with me that the concept of the GRC is still new and is still evolving. We have like coined the term GRC, but we still need a lot of work to be done to really integrate that in with the business and within the GRC actually working together. So we need to develop that framework where we have that right set of the strategies. They go there at the organizational level. You have the right governance set. Then you have that governance and the framework is integrated with the risk management level. The key risks are identified based on the governance that you have developed. And then the compliance is ensured throughout the year based on the same principles as an integrated framework that you have. So once you do these three things, again, you have the right culture, you have the strategic fit, and you have an integrated GRC system. This is a recipe for success. I think the last thing I want to add is invest in technology. Very, very important in today's world. Crucial. Invest in technology. If you cannot, then you cannot achieve sustainable business goals without investing in technology. And the right technologies, like I have seen, like especially in this region, the challenge becomes double when you are thinking of investing in technology. And actually both in terms of, I have seen less resistance to get the budgets approved. People are ready to invest in technology. But in terms of the operational, challenges that you have and getting the actual value out of, I was surprised when I compared this even with the technology and at certain companies in Saudi Arabia. I compared it with the top tier companies even in Northern America, the Canada, US. There are certain organizations here, they are literally at a very advanced stage in terms of the technology. They have adopted it, but the actual utilization of it and the fruition of it is yet to come, and I've seen that is a challenge. So the last thing I think is that invest in right technology and get proper ROI from this. If you are able to do this, I think it will create overall an environment which will enable organizations to do long-term and sustainable value addition, sustainable growth in the business they are serving with.
Perfect. Thanks, Javed. I can see that we all are hungry. I'll have a last question, then I'll wind up this session with the Q&A session. I'll have a last question to Mr. Amro, just to understand the business values on GRC. What do you think? What are the business values on GRC? How it helps the different organizations in KSA? I'm more focused on KSA because we are in KSA, we are talking about KSA market, we are seeing the evolution, we are seeing the changes in KSA market, so I'm more focused on KSA. So,
I think next time I'll have to make sure I answer question first. Because it's so hard coming out second now. I want to answer stuff and I want to say stuff that Javed did not say. So I'm going to be a little bit creative here. But we're talking about business value. Now, I'm sure we will make it very simple. I mean, if you go to Google right now, you open it, what is the business value of a governance, risk, and control, you will get a very nice literature telling you what is the value added that this business is at. Let me come at it from a different perspective. And again, this is coming from my experience working with a lot of the family-owned businesses. Because when I use that literature, and I think you've seen it in a lot of the slides. You know, in the slides, when you do a presentation, the first slide is what's the point, what's the benefit of governance, and there's that beautiful statement that comes, it enable value, blah, 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 blah. It comes right away, right there. Then you start talking about what company should do. You should have this, DOA, blah, 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 and all the rest, right? It turned out that was a big failure, to be honest, and it didn't work at all with me. For one single reason, because they are not convinced. They don't see the value into it. So I came at it from a different angle. So rather I came at it, okay, what governance should do for you, we did it differently. So my question was, rather than answering the what, rather than answering the how, I began by answering the why. And my question to them was, do you think we should do it or not? So let them answer the questions. And a lot of them would say, no, we don't have to. I was like, okay, then let me explain why you should do it by stratifying it further. Because when you talk about governance, it's totally different when you talk about risk. It's totally when you talk about compliance. I work in a very highly and heavily regulated industry, which is the insurance industry. And if you go and just research it, you'll see a lot of regulations there. And we have to comply with them all, right? But the funny part is those regulations doesn't say why you should comply with them. So you say you should comply with this, and that. So literally what I've seen in the industry, a lot of compliance officers take this information, they go to their board, they go to this audit committee, and start telling them that these are the regulations, we should do this, and that. This is the action plan, this is management contribution, this is what we close, this is what open. Nobody invested time to explain why. And actually we did it differently. So I stopped doing that. I took the regulation, and I start sitting with the regulators like, okay, you require this, we will do it, no problem, Mr. Regulator. But tell me, what is the benefit? What is the value added if I do it? What am I going to lose if I don't? Giving the fact that I will do it anyway. I start having those workshops, and we defined actually a benefit value proposition from each single one. And believe it or not, there are regulations that we couldn't derive any value from, so we pushed them down the list. And we focused on the one that there is value, and we transferred that value to a money value. So for example, when I went to my risk committee last time, and they were asking me about the regulation of cybersecurity, I had the two approach in my head. It's like I can tell them this is exactly what the new law requires. This is what the regulator want. Or go the other way and tell them, look, this is what the regulator want, but let me tell you why they want it this way. Because if you don't do it this way, you have an exposure here that will lead to this fragmentation, lead to this risk, and it will cost you this amount of money if it happened. That's a totally different perspective. No heat map, nothing. And when we start doing it regulation by regulation by regulation, the board in the next meeting asked management, did not ask me. They asked management. I was like, guys, we had this presentation before. We sit with the risk officer, and he explained this. What happened? So now the board is driving the discussion because they see the value, because they see if management doesn't apply it, it will cost them money, and they are factoring it now in the strategy. It's part of the CEO KPI. So that's what I see the value of the GRC. And you can apply the same concept. So I give you an example from a compliance perspective. I give you an example from a cybersecurity perspective. The hardest example for me is giving you an example from a governance perspective. If you go to somebody and tell them, like, you have to delegate this, and you have to govern this, and you need to have an audit committee, and you have to, there will be a little bit in doubt. But if you switch the discussion into the why, so why do you need it? And your answer should be not because the regulator requires it. Because this is the answer I hear a lot. Because the regulator wants, because same air regulation requires you to do this. Your answer should not be that way. Your answer should be because this is the value. This will minimize fraud by 5%. This will minimize abuse by 5–10%. This will reduce, for example, big HR cases like sexual harassment or whatever by this amount. That's why you should do it. Now, Mr. Board, Mr. Chairman, do you care about these issues or not? And it is extremely surprising, and I would love to meet that chairman who says, no, I don't care about this stuff. But now he sees the value first. Lead with the value first. Don't lead with that general literature statement that we see everywhere. No, lead with an actual value, with the cost statement, with the value statement. Do you care about reducing fraud? We have 6–7% every year wasted on fraud management or fraud and abuse. Do you care about reducing that? Yes, I care. Okay, then we need to have these control in place in order to do it. Then come at the end of the year and let's measure if it works or not. So there's a story developing now between you. There's a rapport between you and the boards going on. Rather than, no, these are the requirements, regulator wants you to do this, so let's do that, and management has to do it. So this is where I see the value. So Javed talked here about strategic GRC. I would say, I will modify it a little bit. I'd say, you have to turn your GRC into strategic assets. If you cannot turn your GRC into strategic assets, don't have that discussion yet. You're not there. Go back, evaluate, and think about ways to make your GRC as a strategic asset. Don't make it just a control function to control things or to control what could go wrong. Because you can add them together, put them together, turn it into value, turn it a cost, and go explain that value added, and make your GRC a strategic asset. Then you can go on and do the integration because you will have the support, do the awareness, and do everything else. But if you are in your own world, you cannot turn your GRC into a strategic statement. It's going to be useless. You will face the same challenges that everybody has been facing for the last, 20, 30 years, and you will have almost no improvement in that arena. So that's my 2 cents that lasted 10 minutes, I guess. But I'm sorry for that, by the way. I know you guys are hungry, and I don't wanna linger in this too much. I had a heavy breakfast, so I'm okay. But I don't know about you guys, so I'm gonna give you a break here, and happy to answer any question afterward.
Thank you so much, Amro. You touched a few very important points. As we all know that all businesses are being are dodged with many different risks, and like credit risk, market risk, different competitive risk, liquidity, errors, frauds, so many things are going on. Between all this, GRC is very, very important topic, and it's not easy to discuss in 30 minutes. This is what we had. Thank you so much for participating with me. If you have any questions, please, you can go ahead. We'll stop the discussion here. Thank you so much.
So thank you very much. I really enjoyed the talk from both of you. Introducing myself, I'm also a GRC professional by background. So I'll just like to pick up on what Amro mentioned, which is like, the real value is when business sees GRC as adding value, right? And you talked about, putting a price tag or number to sort of demonstrate what's the exposure or values which can be compromised and stuff like that. But if someone is starting at point zero, obviously to get to that point in time, you need data, you need KRIs, you need all of that, right? So like you said, the culture is what needs to play in. What is your experience in terms of where nothing exists, creating that culture without the data to prove the value? So what is your experience, especially that you've worked in family businesses? So I would like to hear on that.
Well, you can use the magic word consultants, right? But what I will tell you what I did, and hopefully this would be a good framework for you or anybody else who are running into the same situation, because I've been in that situation where I walked into the company and there was nothing. So my question to the company was, and let me walk you through a couple of things before that, because I had an interview with the chief HRO, then I had an interview with the CEO, then I had an interview with the chairman of the board. And then I walked into the company after that and looking at it, and as you said, it was exactly the same situation where there was nothing there. So I asked the chairman of the board this question: why did you hire me? Oh, what's the point of recruiting me? What do you want? As simple as that. And I give him the freedom that he can back out anytime. You can just cancel and cut the contract, and I'm happy with it. But you have to tell me in your own words why you're hiring me. And that was my starting point, because he started talking about, again, the literature stuff. We need GRC. GRC is good for the business. I was like, why? Why do you think maybe you don't need it? And I asked him, maybe your company doesn't need the GRC. Of course, I was being naive and cynical. But when he started himself thinking about the problem statement, he started figuring out why he needs it. I have it because, the company is growing very fast. I need to delegate some of the work. I don't know how much I should delegate, how much an oversight. We used to be one company, now we are one company with 7 subsidiaries. Should I have board down there? Should I have board up here? What is the best to do? So he's trying to formulate his problem statement for me, and I use that problem statement to build almost everything else on it. Then I used our friend, the consultants, who brought me benchmarks, who brought me data from the outside. For example, how much money company loses by adapting a system where governance is centralized, where the subsidiaries all report, how much the company loses if they had all the subsidiary with separate board structure, separate governance structure. Then I start formulating options and cost and value added, and every time I develop something, I go back to him, does that answer your question or not? Because if it doesn't answer your question, I'm willing to go and invest another 2 months and come back to you. Don't pay me, I'm fine. But I need to answer your questions. And if I cannot answer your questions, then I have a problem. And this is a lot of people, and I'm sure in the room, when they walked into the company, their maximum level was to work with the senior supervisor they have. They never had the privilege to work with, for example, a CEO or a certain committee or the board on a regular basis. I would consider myself lucky, because all the company I worked with, that was one of my prerequisites. I need to meet the board. I need to be invited to the board session. I need to have a default Q&A with the board. And if it's a committee, I need to do that with the committee. And I made it a prerequisite, because that's the only way to drive action from the top down. Because if I'm doing stuff with the senior management where the board is not aware or is not a priority for them, then I'm wasting my time. So this is how I did it with a company that had nothing. I let them formulate the question, help them formulate the statement, the problem statement. Then, and your biggest challenge is not there. Your biggest challenge, if you walk into that room, and the guy who recruit you tell you, well, I have to have you because the regulation requires me to have you. Now that's a challenge. That's even bigger challenge. And you might tell him then, that is true, but do you know why the regulator wants you to have this position? He may say no. He's like, can you give me an opportunity just to explore this and come back to you and explain to you what's the benefit that the regulator wants to drive? Because if I cannot drive that benefit that the regulator intended it for your company, then we need to go our separate ways, because you will learn something from that experience, but you will not add value to them, and you should be happy with that. I mean, again, I'm not naive. I'm not saying every company I walked into, I added value immediately. There are companies I'm still involved with and engaged with right now. I couldn't drive the value I wanted from them. I'm still facing the challenges. But there are other who I had much success with. So you will have success and non-success, that's for sure. But at least I'm sharing with you why and how I did it and how I get them engaged to do it, so you can have easily a buy-in into the process. Thank you very much.